Good evening, I'm Chris Lovett. We begin tonight with toy guns that look too real. That's why officials and church leaders gathered today in Roxbury, where Mayor Walsh signed an ordinance to ban replica guns in Boston. The ban applies to public spaces. If police take a gun from someone who's less than 18 years old, it can only be retrieved in the company of a parent. So far this year, 153 replica guns have been seized by the Boston police.
I'm encouraging all the parents to talk with your children, if you have this in your home, to make sure that they don't have it. This is not a super soaker. This can be a very dangerous thing on a playground, not only to a police officer, but to somebody else who may have a gun, whom the police are trying to get off the street.
I think we all seen what happened in Cleveland when a 12-year-old was in the playground and he pointed it. That's what we don't want happening here. And we've had a lot of incidents already where our officers have used tremendous restraint and, afterwards couldn't believe that they could have possibly taken a young life. So it's a real frustrating part of our job, and I got to commend them, but it goes to the danger. These aren't just toys. These are something that really can impact a family's life forever.
We've seen some tragedy around the country where young people have had these replica guns, pull them out, and as you can see, if you have a chance, pick it up. They're very heavy. Even when I came in here today, I was thinking they were plastic guns. These are very real-looking guns, and a police officer have to make a quick split-section decision. It's dangerous. And also, Reverend Brown behind me mentioned that if somebody pulls a gun like this on a playground, somebody else has a gun, there's a problem.
They've been out in the street. Some of them have been seized with kids trying to actually bring them into school. So they've been seized in all kinds of circumstances, and and some used in robberies. So they're out there, and they've been used in other criminal ways too. So the less we have them on the street, obviously, the safer our community will be.
And joining us is one of the church leaders supporting the ban, the associate pastor of the Azusa Christian Community, Reverend Mark Scott. Reverend, thank you very much for being with us. I want to start with these guns, and do kids get these guns with their parents knowing about it, you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think sometimes young people get a hold of the guns and the parents don't know. We visited the home of a young man, him and his sister. They had a gun that they purchased somehow and brought it into the school. The school safety officer found it in the backpack, and that sort of gave us an opportunity to go visit them along with the police to talk with the parents about it. In this case, the father did not know. And so we were informing him so that he could then, we could talk to the young people with him there and him as well, and sort of prevent that from happening again.
So how easy is it to get a gun?
Pretty easy. Pretty easy. I mean, the police have gotten 150 off the street so far this year. There's a whole bunch that got off the street last year. Walmart. I mean, you can find them, purchase them fairly easily.
So, of course, one of the things that made people a little skeptical about a ban like this is, well, how do you enforce it?
What this does is, what we're trying to put together is a set of tools, smart tools, creative tools that allows the community and law enforcement to address all of the possible ways in which violence can occur in the community. And so this allows them to, when they find a young person with a gun like this, to be able to take some action. To be able to start a conversation with the family, start a conversation with the young person, confiscate the gun, right? Actually get it off the street. Because, for folk in my generation, you say replica toy, BB gun, I think of a toy. These are not toys, right? These toys can lead to very deadly consequences.
And of course, we heard the story about the 12-year-old boy in Cleveland who was shot by a police officer. So, and these are, snap judgments that cops are going to make because they feel that's what they have to do. Well,
the gun looks very real. There was an incident that happened a couple of Fridays ago here in Boston. There was a pretty big, significant fight on a Friday evening. The police were called out. They were there. There was a young man with a BB gun, with a BB gun out. They actually saw him pulling the trigger. Now, in this case, they were able to stop him, to remove the gun and not harm him, not shoot him, not fire their own weapons. So that's both an example of how urgent it is right here in our community. It's also an example of the police exercising great restraint.
You mentioned that sometimes young teens might get these guns and the parents don't know about it. I guess maybe parents have to maybe do something to make sure. Where do you go?
As a parent,
Yes.
This is a notification that make sure you know what your young folk are up to. Make sure you know what your nieces and nephews, your grandchildren are up to. I mean, a young person will make a bad decision. It may simply be a bad decision. Oh, I can get a toy gun. I might use this to protect myself. Wow, it looks real. I can use this as a way of warding somebody off. And they're making a very bad, potentially deadly decision. And it's one of those kind of things like ask them what they're doing with their cell phones. Talk about it. This is one of those things in the parenting handbook you wouldn't think you had to do. It's a new chapter in the parenting handbook.
I do know a couple of people who have real guns, and the way they talk about them, they always took them seriously. You had to be careful. And I guess if it's a toy, you don't always think that way.
Yeah, that's true, right? And it's also potentially a gateway to something else more serious, right? You start with playing with a toy, and then it leads into the real thing. We still have a major issue around real guns, right? And trying to deal with the real violence. This is something else on top of that.
Of course, the other end of the spectrum here is that you might have some people with these guns who are not kids. They might be grown-ups, and they might be using them in a very almost tactical way to commit crimes. How does this ordinance affect them?
That's a good question. And that comes up as well. The story I just told, he actually wasn't a teenager. He was in his early 20s. He was shooting at people, right? You've heard of them being used in robberies, right? So I'm going to use it. My intention is to rob somebody, but because if you're a victim, you're not going to know the difference. You're not going to even want to think about the difference, right? It might as well be a gun. So they're also being used in that way. So they're being used as weapons, and they're being used as a robbery attempt, and they're also something that are in the hands of young people who think of them as toys.
Do you think that there's something that ought to be done, too, about the manufacturers who make these products and distribute them in a way that they're widely available?
It is appalling, rather unbelievable that someone would actually manufacture and distribute such an item for profit. And I do think that there needs to be an outrage, legislation at the state level around that issue. And I think what's good about, we started to speak up about this several months ago, right? So the first response has to be us in the community, in our homes, with our young people, in our schools, because we can do that today. But long term, long range, yes, there needs to be something that goes to the manufacture of these items.
I was surprised at how many of these replica guns have been confiscated. Just here, I think the police this year, they said 150. Wow.
Yep.
So we should take. By the way, if there's a parent out there who does have someone in the family who's going around with one of these guns and they don't think that they can totally handle that on their own and they do want some help, what's the best thing they can do?
I think probably the best thing to do, whether it's a replica gun or actually even a real gun that might be in the home, is to reach out to your local police district, right? The Boston Police, the City of Boston actually has a police department that has a lot of partnerships. They work very hard to be able to engage the community. So if you were to reach out to your local captain, your local community service officer, they could do it. They could come with a partner, whether it's a social worker, a clergy person, a street worker, and work with the family to address the issue, address the underlying issue, get rid of the gun, whether it's a toy gun, so-called, or a real gun.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Reverend Mark Scott. We'll have more news in just a moment.